Initially, I wanted to be a classical clarinetist, but my father, mentioned to me, if you want to make a living in New Orleans, jazz is what you need to focus on. I took private lessons saxophone with the legendary instructor, performer, saxophonist Kid Jordan. Basically, New Orleans music is around the world. During my father's time, New Orleans jazz came dime a dozen. Every other club on Bourbon Street was live jazz. My father worked from sun up to sundown. Hello, my name is Louis Ford. Born and raised in New Orleans. I'm a fifth generation of musicians, dated back to the late 1800s. My family migrated here from Santo Domingo. As I mentioned, I'm a fifth generation, following my father's footsteps. My dad's fourth generation, along with a cousin of ours by the name of Charlie Gabriel, which is fourth generation. We'll be here all day. There's so many, but the most memorable that I keep dear to my heart was my very first time playing professionally alongside of my father. My father was Clarence Ford Sr. And I was, it was like a dream, to sit alongside of my father playing with him. And, I keep that dear to my heart every day. There's so many, but that's the one that means the most to me. My childhood memories are sort of vague. I do remember at times we used to take trips to Thibodaux, Louisiana. And I was young, so I had no clue what was going on. But my father would be on stage performing, and yet I did not know at the time who these people were he was performing with, because I was busy just being mischief, just running around and, having my own fun. And later on in life, I realized, okay, he was on stage jamming with the greats of Fats Domino, Dave Bartholomew, and we used to go out there on a regular basis. But, it's events like that once I matured and realized how fortunate I was to be around, my dad and also the great musicians that worked alongside of him. Being a fifth generation of musicians, I was surrounded by musicians. My dad, my cousin Charlie, my uncles, my aunts. So it was in the home 24/7. Initially, I wanted to be a classical clarinetist and play with the symphony, but my father, you know, mentioned to me, if you want to make a living in New Orleans, jazz is what you need to focus on. So I studied legit classical music at SUNO, Southern University of New Orleans, along with Loyola University of New Orleans. And I took private lessons saxophone with the legendary instructor, performer, saxophonist Kid Jordan. So I studied under him, learned a lot, and from then on, I just stuck with it. That long trip, from Africa, with the genres of drums from Africa, also the Caribbean beat, or we talk about the clave from Santo Domingo, the Latin feel. So when they made that transition or the migration to New Orleans, you put two and two together, along with spiritual, along with music by rote, European influence, and that's where you come with the creation of New Orleans jazz. From 1897 to 1923, we had an area that was designed, organized by city alderman by the name of Sidney Story. And he came up with the idea, let's create an area in New Orleans where musicians can make an honest living, adult entertainment, libations, alcohol, that kind of stuff. And on the other side of town would be an area where families can congregate, have a good time, without the, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but the likes of Ferdinand Joseph Lament, Jelly Roll Martin, Louis Armstrong, young Louis Armstrong, Willie Percy Humphrey, Kid Ory, the list goes on and on. Young Sidney Bechet, they made an honest living. I can be listing a whole bunch of these pioneers, but just to name a few, that made an honest living in this area called the Red Light District, also known from the guy who originated this area, created this area, Sidney Story. It was called Storyville. So the music progressed, the music evolved, in that area. Prior to that, we have Congo Square, where the Africans or the slaves had a day off so they can celebrate, and entertain, sell, their merchandise as well, and worship. That's a Sunday at Congo Square. So all this comes in hand, how music evolved in New Orleans, hence the name New Orleans, the birthplace of jazz. Jazz evolved from many spirituals. Take, for example, The Saints Go Marching In. That was recorded in 1938, Louis Armstrong. It's a spiritual, out of the Christian black churches. New Orleans got a hold of jazz musicians, Louis Armstrong jazzed it up, and it's how you feel. So, like Joe, he was raised in the church, so we've been fortunate to be around that genre and that type of music and incorporate that with our jazz. Yeah. let's say basically you have a six-piece band, traditional setting band. That would include your trumpet, that would include your trombone, that would include the clarinet, also saxophone, if. Or you have a rhythm section, upright bass, a sousaphone, drums, piano. Trumpet, he's going to take the melody. Clarinet, what he does, he complements the melody. I'll give you a little example. Let's say Saints Go Marching there. Okay, that's the melody. So while that is going on, I'm complementing that melody. Okay, I may do a call and response with him. I may harmonize with him. If he's doing, I may do harmonize with the arm. I might just do arpeggios. And so on. All right. A couple of devices that the clarinet could do is glissandos. And so on, you know. So that's basically the role of the clarinet. My technique, as I mentioned earlier, my ambition was to be a classical clarinetist. You know, so I majored in college. I got a degree in music education as well as performance. Now, I studied classical and I did a lot of etudes. I did a lot of concertos. Like one of my favorites is Amadeus Mozart's K.Shu 22 clarinet concerto. And so on and so on. All right, so with my background of studying legit, you know, helped me become a better clarinet player. So then by learning jazz, you know, it just came hand in hand. Now that depends on who you are, depends on your qualifications, it depends on your mannerisms, depends on your character. All that goes into play. During my father's time, you know, New Orleans jazz came dime a dozen. You know, every other club on Bourbon Street was live jazz. My father worked from sun up to sundown, you know, going from one club to the other. Those were the days when 5 siblings, you know, 3 boys, 2 girls, he put us all through school by being a musician. Nowadays, that's something very rare that you can hear, that someone could be fortunate to do. Right now, a lot of things have gone commercial. You can count on one hand how many clubs there is, you know, that promote New Orleans jazz, traditional jazz. As for myself, I've been fortunate, I've been blessed, you know, as I mentioned earlier about being under the wings of my father and some of the great musicians that played along with my father, you know, to guide me in the right direction, you know. I've made a very lucrative living playing music. I love to teach. I love to educate, and it's not that I had to, but I wanted to because I want to carry my knowledge on to the next generation and next generation. So I did that as well, but again, like I said, I didn't have to. And I used to juggle teaching during the day and gigging at night until I realized, life is too short. I want to enjoy life. I can't be pushing myself that much. So I'm basically music 24/7 now. But like I mentioned, it depends on the individual. How well does he get along with other musicians? How qualified is he or she, to play this music? Are they responsible? Are they dependable? It goes, hit and miss for a lot of musicians, but like some of the musicians that I work here at the hall and elsewhere, we've been fortunate that we make an honest living playing music. These are the ones who came before, so these are the ancestors that paved the way for generation to follow. The likes of George Lewis, the likes of Jeanette Kimball, Sweet Emma, Alvin Alcorn, D.D. Pierce. The likes of those, and we look up to them, because we want to be just like them. If not, become even better, and they were the inspirations to me and many others to continue this music. During the days when CDs were popular, I used to record every other year. I have 5 CDs under my belt, but unfortunately, everything now is, downloaded, so CDs are not as popular as it used to, so from an economical sense, a financial sense, I don't really focus on recording CDs as much as I used to. Other personal projects is basically working on originals. My biggest project that I'm working on right now is that my father, Clarence Ford Sr., everywhere he performed, every day, he carried with him a pocket cassette recorder. And he loved Panasonics and Sony, so he always had a cassette player with him. And he would record himself on every engagement, including the conversations between songs. So if I was to estimate how many cassette CDs I have right now, I'm looking at close to 1,500, maybe 2,000 CDs. So my focus is once I get the time, because I've been overwhelmed right now, is to take those CDs, do a lot of editing with those CDs, and I would like to record those CDs by splicing my father and then incorporating a live supportive rhythm section behind him. I think what it was, I think it was like 15, maybe 15 years ago, the movie Bird about Charlie Parker. That's what they did. They took the live recording of Charlie Parker and then incorporated a rhythm section. So that's my goal. That's what I plan on doing. Let's see if I can think of one that's clean for me to say. There was one time I was playing with my father, and who was on stage? Emery Thompson was on trumpet. Kid Jordan was on saxophone. Willie Singleton was on trumpet. Wallace Davenport. And I don't remember who else was in the group. But it was a tribute to a very well-known jazz club called the Dewdrop. The Dewdrop. So, and the MC, they call him Moose. And we had a guest that come up. We had Ruth Brown. She sang a few numbers. We had Charlie Brown. And we had a local musician, very outspoken musician, flamboyant. And he just had the crowd just into it. Everybody's clapping and everything, and we're enjoying it. But sometimes he was the kind of guy, he might say something that, here we go. So it was like audience participation. As everybody to clap, so everybody's clapping. Everybody's clapping. He said, everybody stand up. Everybody's standing up, And then I'm looking at Moose, the MC. He was seated, and then he must have said something's about to happen. So he's getting close to the stage, and I'm sitting along with my dad. And then while he's asking everybody to do this, that, and other thing, and then he says, okay, now I want everybody to kneel. And my dad say, what? So Moose hurried up and ran on stage and snatched the microphone from everybody, give it up, So that was a funny moment that I'll never forget. But anyway, that's so many. Like I say, we'll be here all day. Now, there was another one. Like I said before, I've been blessed to be around these musicians. So when I was traveling with the Smithsonian Jazz Masterwork Orchestra in Washington, D.C., David Baker was our conductor. And he, these are stories that you won't read in a book, And they were at the White House. And that's when Reagan was president. And everybody was in line, so Reagan would come and shake everybody's hand. But it just so happened there was one musician, very well-known, prominent musician. He was way on the end. And when Reagan was shaking hands, he just shoved his way out front to shake his hand. And all these great musicians look at each other. What is his problem? So anyway. Yeah, like I tell you, we can talk all night about some of these funny stories, but yeah. Well, basically, New Orleans music is around the world. People love this music. And believe it or not, most across seas appreciate this music more than, and that's unfortunate, but that is true. You go to Spain, you go anywhere in Europe, there's a line around the block to get into the club. to listen to this music, and a lot of the younger generations are really focusing on this music from abroad. Um, Here, not so much, and that's why the likes of myself, Joe Lasty, um, we're trying our best to preserve this music and continue the legacy of those before us and pass it on to the next generation. That includes bettering their craft on their instruments, learning the songs the way they should be performed. Also includes attire, how to dress, how to appropriately dress for what the occasion is. Jazz funeral, coat and tie, believe it or not. We're talking about 110 degrees heat. The well-known Grand Marshal, his name was Houston. He had a tuxedo on, and it was 110 degrees out there. The musicians, had coats and ties on, marching not 1, 4, 6 blocks, but we're talking about a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. Yeah, so we're trying to instill that in the younger generations to continue this music. And we're really focusing on the natives of New Orleans because they should be the ones responsible for carrying the torch. We have a plethora of musicians migrating here from out of town and incorporating the music their own way as far as their knowledge of the origin of the song. The musicians who compose and play these songs, they don't know, they don't care. They just here to make a dollar. So that's why the likes of me and Joe and many other musicians here, are doing our best to instill this in the next generation. Listen, study, do some research on musicians. Nowadays, social media is the way to go. When I was growing up, the only way that you can research this is by listening to albums. Now you can easily go to social media. You can go to YouTube. You can go to Spotify, etc. And also going out, listening to live entertainment.